Hello, everybody, and welcome to the very first episode of Comics Explained. I'm your host, Shook Knight. Wanted to invite you to just listen to my meanderings about anything comic book related. Trying to offer non-comic fans a breakdown and review of older comic book stories that their favorite movies are based on. So for this first few episodes, we're going to be focusing on the character of Thanos in anticipation of the new Marvel movie Avengers: Infinity War. In my opinion, they haven't done a really good job of establishing Thanos as a threat in the movies thus far, and they really haven't delved into his character either. I actually love the character of Thanos, and a few years ago, like way before the first Avengers movie, I actively sought out and voraciously read almost all of his comics appearances. Today, we're going to be quickly summarizing his creation and previous appearances in the 70s and 80s. But my main focus is going to be on Thanos Quest, issues 1 and 2. This is the lead-in to the Infinity Gauntlet miniseries, which is the main focus of the MCU adaptation. Couple of little bits of trivia out of the way. Thanos' first appearance was in an Iron Man issue, strangely enough. In 1973, Iron Man number 55, for those who like to remember issue numbers. I don't, so I've got a cheater available. He actually got the Cosmic Cube that same year. And the Cosmic Cube, it's kind of weird. It's basically what, if you've seen the Avengers movies, the Tesseract is actually based on the Cosmic Cube. It's a little glowy cube, basically. And it has, pretty ill-defined cosmic powers, like you can kind of alter reality and stuff like that by doing it. And his main goal was to acquire power, obviously. And so he got it. There's a crossover between Captain Marvel and the Avengers in 1973 and 74. That's how we got it then. Come out later in 77, he was actually turned to granite by a character named Warlock. I'll be going over him just a little bit later. He's actually one of my favorite characters, too. He participated a little bit in the death of Captain Marvel in 1982. That was a pretty big watershed event in comics in general. The first graphic novel available. And then he's resurrected in 1990, which kind of brings us up to the current state of events that we're going to be talking about. I won't be delving into those previous issues for two reasons. Number one, they're not relevant to the MCU. I've kind of noticed it works a little bit like this. The further away from the current comics, the more it doesn't really stand relevant at all. The original Iron Man took place in a cave in Vietnam, not even in the Middle East. So a lot of those older stories don't really have much relevancy to the movies nowadays, and they're kind of mining more of the more recent stuff. But anyway, number two, I read them actually too. Like I said, I try to read everything that Thanos has been caught in. But I didn't really enjoy him that much. Maybe it's just me. I mean, I know it's part of my problem, but reading older comics is sometimes like watching an old science fiction movie. You spend more time being distracted by the bad special effects than you do focusing on the storyline or what it has to present, So it just seems dated, is basically what I'm getting at. Now, the important things story-wise that are gleaned from the previous storylines, Thanos is from Titan, which is a moon of Saturn, a real moon, obviously not with aliens crawling all over it. But there's a race of people living on there that are kind of godlike. They have a lot of godlike powers and stuff like that. He's a son of a guy named Mentor and Suisan. Now, it was later revealed that he actually killed her, his mom, but more on that much later. He had a brother named Eros, or otherwise known as Star Fox. We'll be covering him too. And of course, he was an erstwhile father to Gamora and Nebula. So just like in the movies. So a lot of this is going to be very, very similar. His main goal was the acquisition of power, just like the Cosmic Cube, and Captain Marvel smashed it, rendering it inert, basically. Don't worry, it came back. They always come back in the comics. His last encounter was with Warlock, an artificial human being that has also pretty ill-defined cosmic powers, but he was in possession of a Soul Stone, which Thanos was trying to get and use for his own nefarious purposes. On a creator's note, Thanos was actually thought up by Jim Starlin, a pretty darn good comic writer. He specialized in oddball cosmic type storylines, as we will soon see. A lot of people don't know that Thanos was actually modeled after Darkseid. A lot of people say that, actually. DC Comics villain was created by Jack Kirby. It's hard not to see the resemblance, to be honest. It's pretty much a pale, an imitation, but in some ways better, some ways not so great. It's why the DCEU actually used an obscure villain called Steppenwolf for their Justice League movie. They wanted to kind of avoid the comparison to Marvel in general. For these two issues that we're going to be discussing, just for credit purposes, Ron Lim was the penciler and John Beatty was the inker. I think their artwork is thebomb.com, so I'll be using their screenshots quite a bit to kind of show it off a little. Yeah, I mean, that pretty much covers it. The really cool thing for me personally about the Infinity Gauntlet, and I've said this to a couple of friends of mine before, there's a lot of comic book storylines that have relevancy outside of comics or in the world at large. Watchmen's a really good example of this. Watchmen is actually taught in college courses as literature. It was actually on Time Magazine's 100 greatest novels of the 20th century. And it's generally considered to be a really high watermark for comic book storylines. You can take a lot of the lessons learned in that, Dark Knight Returns, Mouse, any really highfalutin stuff. You can take lessons learned from that and apply them to the real world. And those are the type of comics that, if I were to give a comic book to a friend that's never read one, that would be the one I would pick because they would kind of introduce them to the medium. Infinity Gauntlet is not that. It is pretty much just comics for comics' sake. I always say it's like mainlining straight comics, superhero insanity. They just go for broke. Both the writers and the artists just go nuts with some of the concepts and whatnot. So, it's not something I would give to somebody right away, but it makes it pretty exciting that the Avengers or the Marvel Cinematic Universe has been building up to this moment, to where everybody's excited about it. Everybody's excited about the new movie coming out. It's breaking records already for pre-sales. So everybody's excited to see something that's been excited me for a long time, almost like a guilty pleasure, basically. So, anyway, with that being said, no more preamble. Let's get straight into it. The first thing you'll see on Thanos' quest is Thanos staring into the Infinity Well. This is basically kind of takes place after he got turned to stone. At the end of the 70s, he's dead. He's in death's domain at this point, and I don't remember if it was established this early, before this or not, but he's actually enamored. He's in love with death, and we'll see death in a minute as a personification. Actually, he's not in love with the concept of death. He's in love with the being that is death. So he's kind of musing over it. This Infinity Well is something that exists to kind of give you a view of the world of the living. And you can see some stuff on there. So he's just looking into it, kind of gazing into it, a little bit contemplative, excuse me. And then one of Death's minions comes and collects him, and as you can see, she's pretty badass. She's got a robe on, a purple robe. She's got a skull, although she'll switch back and forth between a skull and an emo chick, so that'll be fun. And she's sitting on a throne of skulls, so... but it appears that Thanos has been actually tasked with something. See, Death has noticed that there are more people alive today than have ever died. She's like, that's not right. I'm Death. I want to see more people dead. So she, says she's going to restore Thanos to the land of the living and give him more power so that he can acquire this. So he can do this. He can kill off half the population of the universe, not just of the Earth, the whole universe. Now he's thinking that it's still not going to be enough, or maybe for his own reasons. He happened to discover while he's looking in the Infinity Well information about the Soul Gems, as he calls them. Now the guy brings up, because Death doesn't talk to him directly. She talks to an intermediary, right? So the guy brings up, you try to use these previously. But he's like, no, I tried to use them as a sword, but they're more like a scalpel. I didn't realize what it was I had. So I would like to go and acquire these things so that way I can achieve the goal. So he pretty much convinces Death to let him go on his way. She reintroduces a craft that he usually sits upon, very similar to the one that was in Guardians of the Galaxy, which is sitting on it and giving orders to Ronan, the bad guy from that one. So the very first thing, excuse me, I got a cough drop going on. Very first thing that he tries to do, he's going to be collecting one of the Infinity Stones, and they're in the most of them, they're in the hands of beings called the Elders. Now I'm going to stop for a second and explain this. Marvel Comics over the last 50 years introduced all kinds of weird cosmic entities. One writer will introduce one writer will introduce the other. You'll be seeing them all throughout the Infinity Gauntlet series. All those of the universe are kind of old beings. There's quite a few of them. He's about to go visit a being called the In-Betweener. He's looks like those characters on the old Star Trek TV series, black on one, white on the other. But he's transgressed something that some other cosmic beings have disagreed with him and put him in prison. So you see this pretty awesome little artwork over here showing Thanos traveling to the nexus of all realities, to try to find him. I don't know, whatever. Comics are weird. Going over that, there's a little bit of writing diarrhea here, but I still love it, where it talks about how awesome Thanos is because he can stand through all this gauntlet, basically, like to travel through these different realities and stuff like that would break anybody else down. But Thanos is unique, and he stays himself. So he goes to the nexus of all realities, sees the In-Betweener's prison. There's a whole bunch of creatures in between him and there, but he just dispatches them very easily. Kind of a nice little show of power. Talks to the In-Betweener, is kind of a pompous jerk, as a lot of these guys are. But he feeds him a line of BS, says that, hey, look, I'm basically Death's slave. I want a different master. If I free you from this prison, will you let me be your thrall? And this guy's like, problem. Yeah, okay, sure. Let me out of here and I'll do whatever, Of course, planning to betray him right afterwards. So together they, use their energies to break him out of prison. This little energy shield that he's in. And immediately In-Betweener's like, haha, you fool. And Thanos he tries to dispatch him, but he can't because he can't use his powers. He's like, what the heck? So Thanos smacks him and says, well, you're an idiot. You in that prison that they gave you, the Lords of Chaos and Order, again, another cosmic entity, they allowed you to use your powers because they were being nice. But outside of it, in the nexus of our realities, you don't have anything to feed off of, anything that your energy needs to power your powers. So you ain't got nothing. You won't be able to defeat me at all. He just pops the gem right off his forehead and walks away, and leaves him to be discovered by Lord Chaos and Master Order. Again, they'll be reappearing again. They're not elders. They're just kind of weird little things that have shown up on occasion, floating weird heads. So Thanos is in the middle of space now with his little gem, kind of just musing over it. And Death and her thrall show up and say, so do you really balk at being in Death, Mistress Death's thrall? Basically, do you mind being her servant? And it's again the artwork here to take somebody as weird looking as this guy. He's got a big ass purple chin, raw, wrinkly, weird looking face, but it made him look like a 13-year-old boy. Like, no, I don't. No, what are you talking about? I just bullshitted him into telling me that, let me do that. So they're like, all right, we'll let you do your thing. So, but at the end of it, he kind of confesses in voiceover that now he knows he's being watched, so he's got to be careful. So there's a little bit of ambiguity there. Maybe he was really hoping to join the In-Betweener, or maybe, who knows. But he's a little bit savvier than he's letting on. So next up, he's visiting another Elder of the Universe called Champion. This is one we haven't seen in the Marvel Cinematic Universe as of yet. Who knows if we'll ever see him. He's kind of And he's not that great of a character. Excuse me. He's just basically a brash brute fighter. And so he's just on this planet right now with a race of warrior people and beating the crap out of them just for fun, just because he can. So Thanos shows up and challenges him to a duel, and he's like, I'm champion, I'll defeat you. And then he just takes I love this part, he takes a real big swing at him. He's like, I am invincible. And then Thanos says, you also telegraph he ducks it from the punch. He says, you telegraph your moves a mile away. He's like, what? Like, you know what, never mind. He just punches him. That's pretty awesome. So they go toe-to-toe for a little bit. Energy blasts abound. Champion rushes at him, and he comes up against his personal force field. In which case he's like, oh, that's chicken shit, whatever. So he starts trying to smash it, and Thanos is like, oh my god, he's actually going to break through this force field, and I'm going to be screwed. And then Champion gives up at the last second. He's like, you know what, I'm bored of this, so I'm going to end this once and for all. So according to Thanos' voiceover, this is what he wanted the whole time. Dude flies up and right back down as hard as he can to try to smash Thanos into the ground. Well, Thanos is too smart for that. He teleports away at the last second, and so he smashes into the ground and even deeper, causing a chain reaction, which caused the whole planet to explode. What can you say? Champion's pretty dang strong, stronger than he thinks. He actually survives the blast, and Thanos shows up, and he's like, oh, that was stupid. You just fought over what we were trying, he lied to him and said that he was trying to win that planet from him. And Champion's like, well, I'll battle you for your craft, for your vessel. And he's like, nah, I don't think so. I'm bored. He's like, but there's got to be something. He's like, how about this? How about you give me that gem on there, and I'll tow you to the nearest planet? He's like, what? No, I'm not giving that up. He's like, all right, fine, bye. Wait, okay, fine. Here, you know what? Take it. Stupid thing never worked anyway. He's like, yeah, okay, sure, it didn't. You're too dumb to figure it out. So he takes him and he literally dumps him on the next planet, just lets him go in the atmosphere. And he's like, I told you I would deliver you to the next planet. I didn't say what condition you'd be in. So now, short work, he's got 2 of the Infinity Stones. Next up is the Gardener. This is a pretty odd little section here. Not too much action, but I still really, really enjoyed it. He shows up to this guy. Again, he's the Elder of the Universe. Looks like friggin' Father Time. He's got the staff. He's got the beard and robes and all that jazz. And all he does is just tend to, admittedly, a very beautiful garden. That's where he spends his time. And I think, Thanos shows a lot of respect for him. He shows up. He's like, look, this is a beautiful garden. Let's walk in it for a little bit. Just chill. So they walk in it for a little. And he's like, I'm here, though, right? He said, yeah, you're after this, the gem. They keep wearing it in the forehead for some stupid reason. So he says, well, I need it. I don't do anything but tend to my garden. I can't. It helps me tend to my garden, so I got to use it for that. And he's like, well, I have to be Thanos, so are you sure you don't want to just give it up rather than have me take it from you? And the guy says, no, I got to be true to myself too. And he's like, that's a pity. So then they sit there for what seems like forever. It's a very weird series of events. It's actually conveyed with the artwork instead of, a voiceover or talking or anything else like that. They just sit across from each other on these 2 benches. And all you see is Thanos. That's a good reason for that. And you see all these vines starting to come up around him. And you can tell, Gardner's trying to use his power to maybe throttle him or whatever. But then Thanos just stands up and breaks it all apart. And, he explains, just talking to himself, as you do, that the reason why Gardner had been so good at tending to his garden was because he actually had a gem in his forehead that controlled time. So it allowed him to speed up the process that a plant grows at, and then hold them in that position where they're beautiful flowered or whatever. So he was subconsciously manipulating time. I did neglect to mention that the previous two gems, the In-Betweener, crap, I can't remember the one he had. I'll have to look back on it. But anyway, the Champion had the Power Gem. It was what made him strong. So I can't remember what it is. Time, space. No, he had the Soul Gem. That's what it was. Yeah, the Soul Gem. But he didn't really use it for hardly any purposes at all. He just had it there. Whatever. But anyway, so the Gardener used the Time Gem, and Thanos, he's got this really sad look on his face. He's like, this garden's beautiful, but it's screwed now. It's falling apart because I just killed you. He used the power gem to increase the time gem to speed up the process of which the vines grew. So the vines grew all the way around and inside the gardener, just killing him. It's a pretty unique way to do it. So we get to the end of the issue. Thanos is on his little chair, just looking at the viewer, being like, "Yeah, I'm a badass. That's what's up. You know what's going on." Into issue number 2, we finally start with something that's a little bit more interesting for those who watch the movies. The Collector, Tenelier Tivan, which he's never named really. I mean, occasionally they drop a name or something like that, but they mostly call him by their code names in the comics. So the Collector is there. Now, this is the one that in the movies was played by Benicio del Toro in Guardians of the Galaxy and introduced us to the concept of the Infinity Stones in general. You can see him standing here with his menagerie of animals and other things he's collected over the years. So Thanos calls him up and says, "Hey, you know what I'm doing, right?" He says, "Yeah, I know what you're doing. You're after my Infinity Stone. You're after my Soul Stone." In which case, Thanos corrects him and says, "I prefer to call them Infinity Stones, actually. Seems a little bit more apt." And he doesn't, use his terminology. He keeps calling it a Soul Stone. But anyway, he says, "I don't think I'd be willing to give it up, especially to you." And Thanos says, "Well, I think I might be able to convince you. If I can give you something that's even more valuable than that Infinity Stone to have in your collection." And this is like music to the collector's ears. He's like, "Well, it'd have to be really good." That's not a no. So he's like, yeah, you know what? I'll get back with you. And so he hangs up. And just like before the interaction with Mistress Death, there's more than one purpose to this call. So Thanos is sitting there on his chair in the middle of space, and he says, "Well, if the Collector has figured out how to use that stone, then he's going to catch up to me right now. Just by the fact of me calling him means he will be able to track me. So I'm just going to wait." Nope. Okay, cool. He's an idiot. He doesn't know what he has. So instead, he goes after the Runner. Now, at this point, he's got 3 Infinity Gems, right? Gems is what they're called in the comics. Stones is what they're called in the movies, but 6 of one, half dozen of the other, right? So they're a little bit more polished. They're not rough rock. So he's noticing that the Infinity Gems are actually kind of allowing him to find the next one. So it's kind of easy for him to track down the next one. It becomes easier and easier with each one. So he goes to the place where the Runner is at. This is the guy. He's gold toed, head to toe, awesome looking, silvery, shiny skin. But he runs really fast because comics are weird sometimes. That's his power. So anyway, he shows up and he's like, "What the heck? The gem said he was supposed to be here," and then boom, boom, boom. He gets knocked off his craft. He gets his craft demolished by something that's running really fast. Go figure. He's running through space even. This, how powerful the guy is. So he shows up. He's like, "Yeah, I heard about what you're trying to do, and you're not going to be able to do it. You're going to have to catch me first." And he just starts literally running circles around him, just kind of enjoying himself. And so he's like, "What? I don't know. Why do you want all these gems?" And so he starts explaining it. And this is a very big clue into the creation of it. He says that a long, long time ago, there was one being who was the embodiment of everything, the most powerful being ever. He's like, if you want to call it God, go for it, because what else would be appropriate? So this being called God was very lonely because that was it. That's all it was. So he split himself off into 5 different gems, and they just, dispersed throughout the universe, and he's trying to reunite them again. And Runner's like, "Great, that's a cool story. Now I'm going to do it." So that's when Thanos starts getting really savage. He starts tearing him down, and the guy's like, "Wait, I have you cornered. There's no way you're going to be able to catch up to me, right?" And so again, it closes in on Thanos, and it doesn't show you Runner, and he keeps talking and talking and talking, and then Runner doesn't interrupt him until it finally pans out, basically, and you see that he's used the time gem to age the Runner by a few million years. Now, these elders of the universe, they thought they were immortal, meaning they could never die or age. But it turns out they're just, they can be really old and not show age. So if you get, a few million years from now, you actually appear to be a really old dude, or a billion years or whatever, So takes the gem off his forehead again with ease, and then he's like, you know what? I think I might like you better as a baby. Becomes a baby, right? And still gold in the whole 9 yards. Like, yeah, you're less of a jerk this way. So he grabs the baby in his hands and takes it with him, and sure enough, the next stop is the Collector. So he says, hey, look, I've got an Elder of the Universe as a baby. Surely that's worth more than an Infinity Stone. And after a few back and forth, the Collector's like, you know what, you're right, I can't really pass that up. Here you go. Here's a gem. And guess what? It's useless. I've done all the scans I can on this thing. It's just a useless hunk of metal, or glass. So go for it. And he's like laughing at him. And, oh, shoot. I did forget to cover it. So the runner, the reason why he was able to move so fast is because he had the space gem. And the space gem allowed him to be able to kind of subconsciously manipulate space and sometimes arrive at places before he could even do it. Basically, he was teleporting just really fast. Anyway, so back to this guy. So the Collector, he's like, I'm not surprised to hear that you think this thing is worthless. It takes some skill and imagination to unlock the features of it, in which case you don't have either one. This is the Reality Stone. And this is, again, another awesome little piece of artwork here. He uses it to, I mean, you could just do anything. You can make everything, go, you can make the bottom become the top and vice versa and just, tear people's insides out, like whatever. You could just manipulate everything, gravity and all that stuff. And immediately the Collector's like, get that the heck out of here. That's a nuts thing. I can't believe I had that the whole time. He's like, okay, cool, I'll get out of here. Oh, by the way, just want to let you know that spell that I placed over the runner where he's going to be, decelerated into a baby, that's temporary. And he boots it out of there. The runner stops becoming a baby and starts beating the crap out of the Collector for trying to collect him. Next step up is the Grand Master. Again, this is one we've seen in the movies. This is from Thor Ragnarok. That's where Jeff Goldblum played him. Now, he's got light blue skin, as you'll see. They went instead with a little, piece of goatee or whatever on there. But he loves games. So Thanos shows up to take the gem from him, and he introduces a game instead. And Thanos is getting impatient at this point. Grandmaster's like, do you want to hear the rules? He's like, nah, let's get to it. I'm like, but okay, I got to tell you the rules, though. Okay? So he has this, circuitry or whatever, little orb that has a force field around the gem to protect it. So if anything happens to me, it'll be teleported out of here, and the teleporter will explode. You won't know where it's going. And Thanos is like, it's impressive. All right, fine, I'll do it too. So he throws all the gems up, puts a force field around him, and says, that force field is set to deactivate in the event of my death. There's like a long pause. He's like, I'd like to play for the high stakes. So he's like, all right, fine. So Grandmaster has this little VR headset they both put on where they're, going to be using avatars to fight each other. Nice little video game thing here going on. He's like, a kill strike in here will not kill you, but, it'll make you in the game and then you lose or whatever. And so immediately they get transported to this mystical, computerized creation. And immediately Thanos is aware of two things. Number one, this is pretty awesome. This is pretty sophisticated what he did. But number two, a kill shot's going to kill on this one. You know what? That's fair. That's what I would do if I was in a situation preventing somebody like me from getting access to the Infinity Gem. So can't blame him for it. But they go back and forth. But of course, Thanos outwits him and tries it for the kill shot. When he does it, his guns backfire and seemingly kills Thanos. It's kind of weird. It's like it encases him in some sort of cocoon or something. I don't know. So, the Grandmaster sits there gloating and knocks the cocoon over. It breaks apart, and there's robot parts. Because Thanos thought I'm going to just send a robot instead. Life model decoy, as you will. So, now with the force field down, because the game has ended, he takes the last gem, and it looks like he kills the Grandmaster, though. All these eyes all come back, so don't worry about them at all. But, at the end of it, he's thinking, this idiot. If he'd used the gem rather than keeping it enclosed, he would have known there was a robot across from him. It's the mind gem. Would have allowed him to read the mind of somebody that's across from him. So now he's got all the gems together, and he's just musing over what they can do, man, Let's see here. The time gem can manipulate time. The space gem can manipulate space. And I'm going to throw a graphic up here that's going to tell you, they all have analogs in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's not really like a one-for-one thing. Like some of them just they don't do stuff that's as well defined, I think, as the comics. But hey, whatever. 6 to 1, half dozen of the other. They didn't realize what they were doing at first. When they had the Cosmic Cube, they just threw it in there. Figured it's whatever. It was only around the time of the first or second Avengers they were thinking, okay, this is going to be this, like the Loki pokey stick, as Kevin Smith calls it, the Infinity Gem that sat in Loki's spear that he jabbed in everybody's heart to make them, to control their minds. Well, that's the Mind Gem. Go figure. And that's in Vision's forehead. And there's others too. The Time Gem is in, Doctor Strange's possession. So who knows whether or not they'll actually use those names for him. But, that's right. So after, gloating, basically, he goes back to, Thanos goes back to Death's palace and says, hey, what's up? I got the power now. I can do what you asked of me. And Death is not happy. She's not overly pissed off either. She's kind of chill. And he's like, I thought you'd be more impressed. Again, talking through some, a lackey, basically. And in a minute, he gets pissed off at this and just blows up the guy. Out of his own, pissed offness. But he's like, I thought this is what you wanted. And she's like, well, now you're more powerful than me, so you're kind of my slave instead of the other way around. So you didn't like being a slave. How do you think I like it? So Thanos goes over the Infinity Wall and has himself one tear. Oh, poor guy. Yeah. But anyway, so that leads us into the Infinity Gauntlet miniseries. A little bit different, setup than the Infinity War. I mean, number one, there's a name difference. The Infinity War actually is a miniseries that happened in Marvel Comics. It was a sequel to the Infinity Gauntlet miniseries, but it involves specific things about Warlock that just aren't going to be. Warlock's not even going to make an appearance in the Infinity War. So Infinity Gauntlet sounds a little passive. Infinity War sounds aggressive. So that's probably why they went with it, would be my guess. It's a war. But anyway, so yeah, next episode we'll be talking about like the first issue of that and kind of going through. They do this thing in comics where they have like a big crossover, and a lot of times they'll have like the mini series itself and little things that are branching off of it. Like an episode. An issue of Silver Surfer will be dealing with, his interaction with Thanos. Then an episode, an issue of this will be dealing with that. Overall, I like to focus on the main event. The other issues are there to get you maybe interested in reading that particular comic, and I'm not going to bother picking it up because it's probably been canceled by now. But anyway, so that's it. Let me know what you guys think. If there's anything I didn't go over, if there's too much I did go over. There's personal preferences on anything. Hopefully I'll be having a different setup pretty soon. Right now I'm just using the MacBook camera and Blue Yeti mic, as you see. Very nice. So the microphone's good. Looks like the quality itself, the video quality is not that great, but we shall see. Till next time, true believers.